What's up, everybody? I want to podcast now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about Skull and Bones yet again. Talk about if Ubisoft is going to talk about this at any point in 2020. So I felt like now is a good time. We're getting ever so close to Ubisoft's online show, which we know they've confirmed they're going to do, right? So sometime maybe around the time that E3 was supposed to be. We've gotten a lot of rumors from the gaming industry just in general that, yeah, you know what, there are going to be announcements and reveals, not just the week of E3 or the week that it should have been, but also the weeks before, the weeks after. Now, yet again, I do want this video to be able to stand the test of time, so it doesn't necessarily even matter about that. It's just the timing of when this video is going up. You know, we've talked about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We know, Watch Dogs is getting closer. We know they'll eventually show Far Cry 6. That would probably be one of the biggest things they talk about in their, again, on their online show. The question I have is, does Skull and Bones make the cut? Okay, now, and we've talked about this before, but obviously we have a little bit new information, and we've gone several months since the last time we talked about Skull and Bones. So what do we know? Well, Skull and Bones cannot come out before, and I think including March of 2021. Okay, cannot come out anytime before then. We know from, I guess, Jason Schreier, who's pretty much the best insider we can look to. We know what Ubisoft's plans are in releasing 6 games over the next coming, let's say, year, right? Little less, because again, it ends in March. And of those games, some of them include Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, Far Cry 6, and then 3 others, but none of them are Skull and Bones. Okay, so again, the earliest that Skull and Bones can release is April of 2021. And you also have to think, okay, well, if Far Cry releases in March, then the Skull and Bones probably doesn't come out in April, right? They probably separate it. How many do they have come out in the spring versus the fall? And we know they normally like to lead, right? And have like one big game at least in each of the 2 like quadrants of the year, right? Like one in the big springtime and one in the fall, right? For the holiday and then also just for the spring. And again, Far Cry seems to be that game for next year. So also we know that generally Ubisoft doesn't show off that many games that are too far out. They're normally, especially, I mean, again, with Assassin's Creed, we've seen the situation. With Watch Dogs, you could also argue, because remember, Watch Dogs was shown basically fully last year at E3, right? 2019's E3. And it was supposed to come out that fall. So even that game, you could say, and normally when does Assassin's Creed get released? April is when we get like the leaks. May is when Ubisoft normally shows stuff. And then June, they do their E3 where they like fully unveil it, right? So same thing with Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed get announced and they come out very soon. You could argue even Skull and Bones was argued originally was supposed to probably be that same thing, right? You announce it, you show it, and it probably releases within a year. Same thing with like a For Honor, right? You announce it. I believe they announced it at E3, and it came out the following February. So that one took a little bit more time, but generally their games release, I'd say, within a year of their announcement. So the biggest question I have is with all, and we've talked about this, right? With all of these other games that are seemingly taking the spotlight, and rightfully so. I mean, being a fan that wants to see Skull and Bones come to life and actually like exist in our households, like I do care about it, but I understand, like, okay, Assassin's Creed is obviously their big push. Watch Dogs, I'm sure they want to do good, so they're going to want to push that. Far Cry, a huge franchise, a game that they need to push as well. So, like, I get, and on top of that, like the new Rainbow Six. So I get it. There's games they have to push, but do they take the opportunity in this online showcase through a press release, through something? Do they talk about Skull and Bones? And to be honest with you, at this point, talk is all I need. Really, I mean, it's not all I want. I want to see it again. But in order for me to believe that this game is still, like, alive and well, and by the way, it doesn't sound like it's well, right? Because the latest we've heard on Skull and Bones is that, again, it's gone through several ups and downs. It's gone through, like, several reboots. A lot of, like, the higher people, like the creative leaders of this game have kind of gone, in and out. So the game, and we talked about that, right? The game that we're going to get, if we even get it, is probably not going to be that close to the game we originally saw. Now, yeah, literally what the spirit of that game is, what it was probably supposed to be, in a larger scheme of things, that'll survive, right? Obviously, like an open world-ish, like where you're sailing the seas and you're fighting on ships. Like, that'll stay. But the rest of it, we'll have to see how much actually carries over, right? But again, with all this other stuff, I just don't see how something like this, how you end up showing Skull and Bones with this other stuff. You have to look at priorities, and that's another even reason why I talked about for like a Warner Bros. Thing. They have a lot to show, and they can only show so much, and you have to focus, I think, I mean, this is just my opinion, you focus on what's coming soonest. You see movies do that all the time, right? Marvel normally doesn't really ramp up the next thing until the first thing comes out. Look at even the Eternals. We haven't even seen a trailer yet. Why? They were waiting for after Black Widow. Now, obviously, with everything being delayed, that kind of gets thrown out, but movie companies do it all the time. You focus on one thing at a time. Gaming, normally same thing. You can announce a bunch of stuff all at once, which movies do too. You announce stuff all at once, but then you talk about one at a time, the ones that are closest. So Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed, in my opinion, those are the ones that get the spotlight, right? Those are the ones that are immediately up. Those are the ones that need, I mean, Assassin's Creed specifically, that's their big dog. That's the thing that is going to make them a lot of money, obviously, and help them in a lot of different ways, right? But again, with Skull and Bones, all I need is talk. All I need is a reference from Ubisoft that it's still going on. Now, a lot of this has been kind of negative, a lot of pessimistic, right? Not really feeling very confident about the possibility. What I will say is this. What I like about these kind of times, literally of these like award shows or presentations or conferences, anytime we have things like this, even if a game isn't fully shown or shown just a little or not shown at all, or whatever the situation, oftentimes you do at least hear talk of other things. This is a time, even when, honestly, when games release, that's also like I'm in a negative way. I always kind of focus on like what comes next versus like staying in the now. It is a problem that I have, and I think in general, I think we as like humans, and because of how fast everything moves in our our lives with technology and all that kind of stuff, we're always moving forward. But what I do enjoy is like, say like The Last of Us Part 2. I think one of the things that intrigues me so much about that is when the game comes out, you have all the stuff to talk about on that, but you know what else you have to talk about is Last of Us Part 3, because one of the biggest things going to be talked about is, do you make a third? How do you make a third? When's it coming out? What's it going to be about? All that, you know what I mean? Those are the questions that are always there, and you even see that even with Final Fantasy VII's remake, right? Part 1, the first one that came out just a few weeks ago. One of the main things that happened right after that is, when's Part 2? When do you get Part 2? Their director, right, Tetsuya Nomura, has talked specifically about that a few days ago and said, here's when, we wanted to get it out ASAP, right? So things like that, you generally get a little bit of a trickling down effect when this thing happened. Now, I gave examples of when games release, you get talk of sequels, you get talk of the next game that company's making. You really get that every single time. Even with like Death Stranding, right? Kojima Productions. What's everybody talking about? Even when Death Stranding came out, what was the talk over like that late November, early December? What happens next? Is it a Silent Hill game? What are they working on next? Is it going to come to PC? All that kind of stuff. Or when's it coming to PC, right? All that stuff. That's generally how it works, and that does excite me. I think, honestly, with all those examples, you see why I kind of get caught up in all that, because it really happens every single time. Now, again, do I expect because Assassin's Creed's releasing, when Assassin's Creed comes out, Ubisoft says, oh yeah, let's talk about Skull and Bones a little bit? No, but another example is you do get that at conferences. You get that at these things. At E3, I think there's normally a lot of things because you have now the problem is, it's not E3. Everybody's not in the same room together. Everybody's not having like 1,000 interviews, right? That can hurt it. But what would probably normally happen would be the heads of studios, even maybe the heads of the specific companies, right? Because like when they go on the show floor, when Ubisoft has their conference, they're top dogs, like their CEO and all that stuff. They're up there, or they're at least there. And what happens normally after that? Sometimes they do interviews and they kind of give you a little bit of a preview as to what some teams are working on. Again, they maybe give you more info on things you've just seen. So say in a normal case, you get Assassin's Creed. Maybe they would talk a little bit about Assassin's Creed, but they also may talk about something that hasn't been shown yet. Also, again, like situations like this, reassuring people that like certain things are still happening. So normally I would say it would probably be looking good, because I don't see how. I think gaming journalists are generally okay with asking those kind of questions. I don't think politically, you watch the news or whatever you do, and maybe you say like, oh, I really wish they would have asked this person this thing that I'm thinking. I feel like in gaming, generally somewhere in the world of gaming, somebody will have asked that that question. So I feel like if we get interviews around Ubisoft's online show, okay, if there's like a huge press release and they announce all these games and they do an online thing and they announce Far Cry and they show Watch Dogs and they show Assassin's Creed, all this stuff, I find it hard to believe that they're not going to publish interviews with like IGN and GameSpot and Kotaku and like they're going to have some sort of interview, right? And in that, I hope that they talk about future games, and in that, I hope Skull and Bones is mentioned in some way. I honestly think Skull and Bones is big enough still and like around in people's minds where it could get brought up, where somebody would ask the question, hey, what's going on? And they could say, well, they're working on it very tirelessly, it's going really good, but we're not ready to show it off yet. Something like, even like that, which isn't really all that much, and they could even be lying about like everything's going good. They could be lying, but at least you get confirmation it's still happening. Because truly, again, I don't want to make this like a very time-specific thing, because even if E3's time, like when E3 was supposed to be, right, the replacement E3, even after that, I think the door is still open. I think my deadline would probably be towards the end of 2020. If we come and go through 2020, and there's not a single thing talked about on Skull and Bones from Ubisoft, and again, there's multiple times you could do it. There's this replacement E3 show. Gamescom is going to be all digital. They're going to work with publishers to do digital stuff. There's an opportunity there. You're going to have the release of Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed, where, again, different kinds of people in the company of Ubisoft can kind of talk about what's coming next as well. Game Awards, right, of 2020, you're going to have lots of different opportunities to at least mention Skull and Bones is around, because the only mention we've gotten about this game recently is from Jason Schreier, who I don't like him as a person, I don't like his beliefs, I don't like go along with him on literally anything. The only thing he's good for, in my opinion, is for leaks, which is fine, that he serves his purpose, but that's it. And he's the only one who's talked about it. So just based off of that, the only info we have on Skull and Bones over the last 6 to 12 months is him saying one thing, saying that, again, it's had some troubles and it's probably been rebooted and stuff like that. That's a bad sign. I want Ubisoft to not maybe address that. They don't have to address that. I would never really expect them to address that, but to at least tell us it's still happening, because every time they give their fiscal earnings stuff and they talk about the games to come in the future, Skull and Bones is never there. It's always pushed to the next one. So the longer it goes on, the longer the reality that it could eventually get canceled, I think, becomes more and more real, and I don't want that. I mean, I don't want games to be canceled. So I really think 2020 is a very important year to at least get, again, recognition, confirmation that Skull and Bones is happening. And again, being an optimistic guy just generally, and this could lead me astray for sure, and it has led me astray, I feel like in my gut, I feel like 2020 we're going to get something. They're going to announce something about this game. I really do. I really, really do. I really feel like at some point a question will be asked or something, and they will say, just in maybe a very short statement that may fly over a lot of people's heads, but obviously we would care, is it's still happening. And again, is that the best news in the world? Do I want more than that? Yeah, but I think it's good enough for the situation that we're in now. I think it's okay enough. So guys, let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Are you guys still excited for Skull and Bones? Do you think we need that kind of confirmation in 2020? When do you think we would get it? All those things, let me know in the comments. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, Podcast Now. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. And I still want to talk about Skull and Bones. I know I haven't done it as frequently over the last little while, but if anything big happens on this game, or if I think of any other topics, I'll definitely have more videos on this game for you guys, okay? Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.